Hey folks, it's Ted, and you're watching the Business of Cyber series show. Got a big plan today talking about 4-1, very excited about it. But the theme of our discussion is that we all, as security and risk management leaders, have limited amounts of resources. So you got to use them very wisely. We're talking about time, we're talking about people, and more than anything, we're talking about budget. Now, there's been a ton in the news. There's been a ton associated with critical infrastructure. There's been a ton around cybersecurity in general. We've had some major transactions happen over the last couple of weeks. We've had some major news events happen. So now more than ever, it's important for us to bridge the gap of knowledge divides. And today we're going to dive into that. As you know, we have had hundreds of views, even thousands of views on the topic of IEC 62443 over the course of the last couple months. We've had an intro to the series. We've had a deep dive into 3-2. And our number 2 most demanded talk was a deep dive into 4-1. That's what we're going to be doing today. So whether you're a supplier, whether you're an asset owner, whether you're a consultant, the intent for today is to dive into one more of the different standards in the series. And I'm super excited to be joined by somebody who I look up to in the industry, Mr. Rahul Gupta. Rahul, thanks for joining today. How are you?
Yeah, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to join this session. Yeah, thanks, Ted, for this invitation.
No problem. So, little history for the viewers out there. We had over 210 registrants, which is a really high number. There are going to be tons of people that continue to watch this over time. So, what we're aiming to do together is fulfill an idea that we had, about 4 weeks ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, Rahul. We had been speaking about a project together. And the more that we talked about 62443, what we're each doing within that organization and series of standards, we just decided that more people needed to know, even in layman's terms, what is 4-1? Does it apply to me? How do I approach it? And I thank you for, offering so many great insights that at the end of that call, I said, hey, man, we've got to get on a show together. So what are we going to be talking about today, sir, as it relates to 4-1?
Yeah. So mostly, can you share the slides, the talking points? Yeah. Yeah.
We're just having a little bit of an issue. Just pause for a second, folks.
Yeah.
For some reason, it's not showing our slides. Technical difficulty. Let's see here.
So to start with, assuming some people wants to know what is IEC 62443. So we'll be discussing an overview of 62443 standard. Then, importantly, as part of this session, we will be discussing and doing a deep dive. What is IEC 62443 4-1? And this 4-1 actually talks about the security product development life cycle. So we'll do a deep dive on that. What does it mean, and how does it apply to the products here? And after that, we will discuss about how to implement it, and then importance of 62443 4-1 certification. And then question come, if you have to go for the certification, all this product manufacturer, then what preparation is needed? And then as part of the preparation, what is needed, importantly, discussing the key aspects of the training, what role training play for product manufacturer, and how it can benefit to the product manufacturers. Yeah. So this will be the high level agenda today.
Right. Well, and if you recall, for those of you that are not familiar with this series of standards, we're going to go over 62443 in general. We're going to find out where does 4-1 sit within that. And then we'll get into some of the specifics of how do you get certified, what are the importance of training, all that. Looking forward to it. Now, to give the audience a little bit of color, now that we have our slides back, Rahul, would you tell us a little bit about what takes up the majority of your time as a lead principal advisor within this space?
Yeah, thank you, Ted. So I'm a lead principal advisor for UL Solutions, and I'm currently based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. My field of responsibility is technical lead and global subject matter expert for cyber programs, precisely IEC 62443 for industrial cybersecurity. And also I am the 62443 training program owner and instructor. So my career is spanning over 33 years in the industry, and my domain expertise encompasses IACS design, engineering, integration, and operation, and focusing mainly on the life cycle integration of the functional safety and OT cybersecurity solutions. And these accomplishments are spread across various industry verticals. In last 33 years, I have been working in like industrial automation and control, critical infrastructure industry, oil and gas, renewable energy, power and utility, smart automotive, smart building, smart manufacturing, and then pharmaceuticals. Yeah. So my previous work experience has encompassed various stages of IACS lifecycle, spanning different roles and industry. I began my career with an asset owner company, followed by a design and engineering consulting and advisory firm tenure. And then subsequently, I transitioned to the role within the system integrators, product manufacturers, solution developers, and service provider. And these are the key stakeholders of IACS lifecycle. And currently, I am working with a standard development organization and a certification company. And I have hands-on proficiency in numerous OT and industrial cybersecurity standards, and I utilize this knowledge how to provide clients with comprehensive training, advisory services, assessment, and certification. And most importantly,
Interesting.
yeah, seamlessly integrating these standard into business operation. And some of my like published papers and webinars are actually centered around application of life cycle concepts to ensure secure product design, system integration, and threats and risk assessment, much like how a chain's strength relies on its weakest link here. So this is a brief bio about myself, what currently I'm doing. Yeah, thanks, Ted.
Makes perfect sense. So if we, I mean, you obviously are on the training, the program management, the policy development, the actual certification process. So one of the things that the audience should note is that as it relates to the 62443 standards, you have different parts of that series that is about establishing an overall IACS framework. We've already talked about a risk methodology, a risk-based methodology that is continuous in nature. There are certificates that you can get as part of a multi-course training. We had somebody on the show previously to talk about that. But 4-1 actually has a certification process. This is the first time that folks on the show are going to be able to understand what is the robust nature of that. But before we dive into all that, I wanted to offer just a little bit of perspective of where does 4-1 sit. And so if you take a look at this particular slide, and it's got a lot on there, so I'm going to make it large for the audience here. And if you'll join me, folks, in just understanding that there's 4 different, let's call them chapters of IEC 62443. All of them were designed for IACS, so industrial automation and control systems. What happened, and we talked to one of the original authors, John Cusimano, last week on the show about this, is what was the genesis, let's say 10 to 12 years ago, that created this series of standards? Now, it's not the only series of standards that's out there, but this one was created because they had a lot of different compliance. They had a lot of different maturity standards for IT-based organizations. But as they saw industrial automation and control systems start to take a larger, risk model or threat matrix within the realm of cybersecurity, folks came together to start to develop what was originally a standard and then became a series of standards specific to IACS. So we're talking about automation engineers. We're talking about network engineers. We're talking about asset owners, the operators themselves. We're talking about the critical vendors. So when 4-1, correct me if I'm wrong, Rahul, but the entire purpose of 4-1 was specifically aimed at the secure development lifecycle for components within an IACS environment. And if they were building it, they needed a secure lifecycle to build that product. If they were installing it, they needed to understand what were the gateways to make sure that what I am installing in my industrial network are actually secure. And then as we actually go into brownfield or even greenfield for design, 4-1 has a role that the asset owner, the vendors, the critical suppliers are all kind of connecting the dots together on a known standard. Is that a good overview of where 4-1 sits within the 62443 series? And from your vantage point, really covers the foundation of why it's used why it's really demanded in the market?
Yeah, so you have given a good summary and overview of 62443. So most importantly, I would like to add, I think in 2021, this ISA IEC 62443 series of standards has been designated as horizontal standard, and meaning that they are proven to be applicable to wide range of industry. So that's a major change. Means, and that's bring this 62443 acceptability to wider range of the industry, and therefore it's very important that all the stakeholders involved in IACS life cycle, uh, they should know about this standard irrespective of the industry they are working for. Yeah. So, and this 4-1, yes, you rightly mentioned, is all about the secure product lifecycle requirement, and these are the two standard like 4-1 and 4-2, mainly applicable for the component manufacturers. Yes. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So we've fielded a couple questions. Most of them are actually about certification. How does a product manager or a product maker get certified? So let's dive into the actual kind of nuts and bolts. Tell us about 4-1. Tell us everything that you can from a lens of somebody who's doing this every day on the certification, but also to some of the folks out there that are not familiar with that standard. What can you tell us about 4-1, Rahul?
Yes. So to start with, I will say that cybersecurity is a journey and not a destination. Okay. So considering this in the mind, this 62443 part 4-1 carries the title Secure Product Development Lifecycle Requirement. Okay. And and it is specified the secure product development lifecycle requirement means process requirement for the secure development of product used in industrial automation and control system. And a product which offers security functionality is not necessarily a secure product. That's the key. Means if you have a product with lot of security feature, it doesn't mean it's a secure product. And this is where the importance come of secure product development lifecycle. And this 4-1 it defines 8 practices, and there are different requirements in this 8 practices, varying from 5 to 13 requirements. Yeah. And then the next important thing is cybersecurity is not about the absence of threats, but also the presence of defenses. And therefore, this standard 4-1 is providing the defense in depth. Yeah. So that's important. And by using 4-1, product manufacturer protect their products against unintentional vulnerabilities such as supply chain risk and intentional malicious interference from professional hackers. And another important thing, as a consequence, system integrator can trust the product, knowing it has been subjected to the strict security controls and intensive security testing during the development. Plus, the next important stakeholder, assets owner, can rest assured that they will probably receive security patches for any vulnerabilities discovered in the product. So this is a brief summary of 4-1, and it provides a secure product life cycle, as well as it created trust in the stakeholders down the supply up down the supply chain, like a system integrator and assets owner.
Right. So if we just think about where 4-1 sits, we have asset owners that are using chapters 2 and 4 to actually build out their IECS program. We have asset owners working with their risk department, their finance department, their threats. They're looking at all of their different systems. They're breaking up into zones and conduits. They have systems under consideration. They're running continual life cycle of risk on, and they're using 3-2 to do that. Now we enter in a new persona, which is the product supplier. Now that product supplier, what you're saying is uses 4-1 to actually drive the security life cycle throughout that product development. And then that's across applications, that's across network components, embedded devices. how does 4-2 then help drive, what's that next step with 4-2 of driving that in from a supplier perspective into the system integrator and the asset owner?
Yeah. So the key difference, like 4-1 is talking about secure product development lifecycle.
Right.
And one thing I want like to add, uh, there are two terms we are using interchangeably: component and product. Like if you look at 4-2, 4-2 is a standard for security requirements for IACS component. But we look at the title of 4-1, it's about secure product development lifecycle. So these terms are interchangeably used, like device, product, components. A component could be a component in other component or in a product. Okay, so that's the difference between the use of these words. Then going back to what is the difference between 4-1 and 4-2, which is actually applicable for product manufacturer. So 4-2 is defining the technical security requirements for IACS components, and deals with components or device, or yeah, so it specifies the security constraint that need to be fulfilled to pass a specific security levels. So there are four security levels specified in the standard, going from SL0 is actually there is no security controls. So going from SL1 to SL4, and each of these security levels can be tested, uh, and then accordingly the device security capabilities are measured and certified accordingly. Yeah. So that's the difference. Secure 4-1 is about secure product development lifecycle, means right from the birth to the end of the life of the product, how you design, and there are different stages here for
So
the
just
product.
real quick on that, because I wanted to cover defense in depth, and I also wanted to cover life cycle approach. So I think one initial belief that people may have about 4-1 is, well, it's a secure product life cycle. So that just means when I'm making a component, when I'm making a device, I've got to follow this standard. I got to get certified that I am able to implement security throughout the process. But the second it leaves the vendor and it gets sold to the asset owner outside of the implementation window, whose responsibility is it? So comment a little bit on, I have a perspective, but let's just cover two perspectives that the market might think. Once the vendor follows the 4-1 process, they're certified, they get the product out the door, the asset owner, the integrator owns everything. Versus the asset owner and the integrator and the product supplier throughout the life cycle, which may be 5, 10, 15 years of the component within the IECS, has to continually assess its security. How do you feel, how would you answer that kind of disparaging perspectives, Rahul, in the market today?
Yeah. So looking at just bringing the attention to these slides and what you mentioned earlier, see how this 62443 has been written and how this IACS lifecycle work. There are different stakeholders, and it's a top-down approach. The on the top, assets owner are sitting. They measure the risk and they define what is the security levels they need for their facility. Yeah. So it's called security level either 2, 3, 4, depending on the risk involved in their facilities, and that they define to the either service provider or system integrator, those who are buying different products component from the manufacturers and integrating and supplying system to the
Right.
assets owner. Yeah. So when system integrators are purchasing these components or product from different manufacturers, so they know the assets owner had defined the security level, which is called security level target (SLT). And let's say the assets owner has defined the security level 3 or 4, depending on the risk in their facility. Then accordingly, system integrator ensure, just now you talked about 3-2, defining zone conduits and all. That time, they ensure that this is called, they are assessing the security level achieved. So by doing this risk assessment and evaluating the security levels, like what is the security level achieved, so they ensure that security level achieved is either equal or greater than the security level target defined by the assets owner. And system integrator try to ensure that when they are buying components or product from the manufacturer, So for the component manufacturer, this 4-1, 4-2 certificate define SLC. So that is the capability of the product, means security level capability. And again, it carries like SL1, 2, 3, 4 different security
Sure.
levels. So when integrator are buying component, they are trying to buy the components or product where their capabilities is at least equal to or higher than the required SLT. But
Right.
sometimes it's difficult. So there are different provisions in 62443 standard, like in form of countermeasures, yeah, external countermeasures. By using that, you can increase the required security level. So that work is done by the system integrator during this risk assessment workshop. So this is how this whole life cycle works. Yeah.
Right. So we've got a couple comments through the chat. Tons of people talking right now. Some people are saying in rail that this is a 30-year challenge, right? Some people in oil and gas are saying this is a 20-year challenge. So I think we've got a lot of asset owners. I think we have a lot of automation engineering in the room that understands that the life cycle is not something that is just, check the block, let's get a product out the door, make sure it was secure when we made it. This is about an entire life cycle. So as we switch gears, I've got a new slide up. Okay. You and I talked about this in the pre-show, the importance of implementing this entire life cycle. Help me and the audience understand, because you're in this game every day, Rahul. Your team is in this game, helping organizations establish this life cycle. Give me some of the whys. And last week we had someone on the show that said, look, there is a lot of value in understanding this life cycle as an asset owner. There's a lot of value in bringing somebody else in. We'll get to that question. But right now, let's understand the foundation. What are the biggest problems that suppliers are having out there when they look to you to start implementing a 4-1 process or a sprint to improve their overall security development? What's the why behind that?
Yeah. So when it comes to importance of implementing a security development lifecycle, and of course we will discuss what are the key challenges here. So it is extremely important. Yeah. So a strong, I'll use SDL is the foundation of OT cybersecurity. So the significance of IEC, ISA IEC 62443 guided SDL in securing IACS component can't be overstated. So by aligning with this series of standard, organization can proactively address cybersecurity concerns, enhance their security posture, and mitigate potential risks that could have far-reaching consequences. Uh, Based on like our interaction and our market study, we have observed that there is a noticeable enhancement in OT cybersecurity when adhering to this ISA IEC 62443 standard during the SDL. So in cybersecurity, early detection of potential threat is essential for system integrity, like identifying an iceberg before it hits the Titanic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so a product, as I repeat my earlier statement, a product which offers security functionality is not necessarily a secure product. So we require a secured product development lifecycle. So I will take some practical examples to explain SDL. Yeah. So SDL is similar to like cooking a delicious meal. Okay. The SDL in 62443 4-1 involves careful planning and selecting ingredients, means security measures. Yeah. So following a step-by-step means at different development stages and ensuring that the final dish, means IACS component, is delicious and safe to consume. We take one example, like if you add an egg to a dish after finishing cooking, yeah, which you need to add at the beginning of the cooking, so you may spoil the dish. So in the same way, SDL helps to add security measures at the right stage of the product development. Another good example could be like when you're designing a product, you have to consider the life cycle, like design, then you are doing risk assessment, threat modeling, risk assessment, then validation, then testing, then implementation, then operation, installation, and then maybe the decommissioning or end of life. So let's say a product is going for end of life, and most of these products have some confidential information. So before disposal, how would you erase those information? So what are those guidelines for the end users that need to be built during the design stage? So cybersecurity at the outset means as a priority in the beginning, not a afterthought. So that's the importance of SDL. And I take another example, like for SDL, like think of a secure product development lifecycle, like a blueprint of a constructing a fortress. So just a fortress needs a meticulous plan design with strong walls, a layer of protection, and well thought out defenses. So the SDL provides a structured framework to build IACS components that can withstand digital threats, and it is the architectural guide that ensures the reliability and resilience of our digital fortress, making them resistant to the cyber attacks. Yeah.
Do
So
you have some specific examples of when a secure life cycle was not approached, and that entire process was broken a little bit? And what are the implications of that, either kinetically or non-kinetically, to an asset owner?
yeah. So maybe I'll add another example. Like if
Yeah.
you are not following secure product development lifecycle, uh, which actually established the trust between IACS component manufacturer and its customers, means like system integrator or assets owner. So I take an example from mechanical engineering. All engineers know with every further step in the products, like from design to operation, cost to correct an error increase by the factor of 10 to the power 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So if, let's say, if a brake in a car is detected as dangerous, this could lead to recall of millions of cars, and it has happened already more than once. Yeah. So same principle applies to the software. So we are implementing software in our products. So there are many cases. There are a lot of research done by different agencies, and there are case studies where it has been found that 75% of the vulnerabilities are application related, and over 70% of security vulnerabilities exist at the application layer, not at the network layer. And the cost of fixing a bug in the field is almost 6 times more than the when you are fixing the error in the coding stage. So if you are going to fix a bug in the field, it might cost you $30,000 versus $5,000 if you are fixing that bug during the design stage. So these are the real cases from the industry where the source of vulnerability left in the software during the as a design flow or coding error or misconfiguration lead to a financial implications or maybe identification of vulnerability which could have been possibly exploited by the attackers here. So these are the real cases coming from the industry here.
We had a question that I think is pretty important, and it has to do with continual certification or tracking. So the question coming from one of our consultants that's watching: how can we help OEMs track and manage their compliance against 4-1 over the 20 to 30 year life cycle? I think I have a perspective, but I'd love to hear from you first, Rahul.
Yeah. So means, as I mentioned, like in the beginning, how this life cycle work. So what is happening, like these certifications, yeah, like 4-1, 4-2, all these certifications are there. And then many of these assets owner are identifying these requirements in their procurement language. Means when they are sending out the tender, they define that they need a certified product. So what happens is this certified product means, like if you are talking about 20 years, so when you are using a product, let's say for next 20 years, so you have to ensure that those products carry the valid certificates here. So these certificates come with certain conditions. Okay. Uh, there are certain conditions, like if you some new vulnerabilities are identified, or if there are any major changes needed in the firmware updates here, so that need to do the re-certification. So it's important to track all the certification of the products or the system what you are using at site as a assets owner. And this has to be done, yeah, when you as a assets owner you are maintaining the life cycle, there should be a program which should have the tracking of all the certificates and having the live certificate in the system, and to know about what are the conditions for those certificates, like on which they have been certified. And if anything is changing, like certificate expired, or if new vulnerabilities identified and vendor is going to redesign the product, so are they really going for the recertification and all? Yeah. So this is how they can manage for the
Well, and there's a component within it. We should dive in a little bit to 4-1, just the subchapters and things, but there's one that's validating and verifying the security update process or management of security related issues, right? Can you talk a little bit about how the certification process validates and verifies those, what I think are long-term functionality of a truly secure product lifecycle?
Yeah. So like this 4-1, as I mentioned, there are 8 practices, and all the 8 practices, the requirement start with the 6 keyword. There should be a process employed for. Okay. So first 6 word is there should be a process employed for, means there has to be a process for all these 8 practices. So most importantly, I want to bring another term, the security by design. Okay, so 62443 is based on the security of design, or in other words, secure design principle. So this is not just limited to the design phase, but
Right. The
this
whole
is
life cycle.
applicable for the product life cycle, from initialization over analysis, design, realization, initial setup, and operations. Yeah. And the good example I have given, like after decommissioning, how do you means if you are going for the disposal of the product, how you ensure that secure products are not disposed in a way that you compromise with the confidential information is already there in the device. So when we are talking about as a part of certification and these 8 practices, so yeah, these 8 practices, the first one, the major one, is security management, and it talks about the planning of the overall documentation and execution of the activities throughout the product lifecycle. The next one is called security requirement. The abbreviation is like SR. This is another practice. So specification of security requirement is mainly defining the documents and capability of the product, including authentication, authorization, encryption, auditing, and other functionality related to the product. Then third is security by design, and it covers all the stages of the products, design from concept to decommissioning, and design details level from architecture to individual components. Yeah. The next is secure implementation. So it's talk about identifying requirements means requirements not implemented, and identifying failures to adhere to coding standards. Yeah. So it specify the role of static code analysis to find coding errors, or examination of methods to exploit the implementation. The next one is called SPV, which is related to security verification and validation testing. And it's all about like the objective is to ensure that product remains secure when it is used in intended context. The the next sixth one is management of security related issues, which
Right.
talked about, yeah. So it's all about like process of receiving, verifying, tracking, and notification of security related issues for problems which are reported either internally within the product manufacturer or externally by third parties such as system integrator and asset owner. So I correlate my previous comment, means when you are maintaining the life cycle, during the life cycle of as an asset owner, it's important to gather all this information. Yeah. And then security update management, that is the seventh practice, is all about like security updates
Sure.
for security vulnerability. And last is security guideline, which is important, that define the deployment of product in the defense in depth environment. And this guideline covers device security, incident reporting, and secure device disposal. So this is important. Like if this guideline is not provided, the system integrator or asset owner may not know like how to use this secure product in a secured way. So these are like a high level summary of all these 8 practices.
Yeah. And you've got these 8, let's call them principles, let's call them chapters, let's call them functional areas there's a lot of substandards underneath that, right? So there is a way that you could assess yourself to see how established I'm just going to speak from a supplier perspective, how established your overall supplier security lifecycle program is built out. But you could also view this as an auditing mechanism. So quick question, how do you view when someone engages you for a 4-1 cert, how often are you walking into an organization that has been developing this life cycle for some time? It's very robust and data oriented. It's very documented and is in a state of continual improvement versus somebody that comes and says, we're building this product and we have to get it certified. So can you give us kind of a framework or a template to operate off? Where do you see the market? Where do you see the market going? And what are the differences between those two kind of parties, Rahul?
Yeah. So that's really important. We have seen different trends in the market that I'll come to the next. But before that, like if anyone, any organization looking for 4-1 and or they looking for secure product development lifecycle. So the key issue in the cybersecurity is how to measure the security. Yeah? So we have discussed, like when we were discussing about 4-2, so product security, like what are the security capabilities of the product that we can measure with that, like SL1, SL2, SL3, SL4. These are the security level capabilities.
Right.
But how do we measure an organization for SDL? Yeah. They may claim that we have secured product development lifecycle. So how do we measure? So in 62443 4-1, as a modified CMMI model has been used to measure the maturity level. So this is the
Right.
another term, like maturity level. And to explain this maturity level, I'll take like some examples. So there are different levels like ML1 to ML4. So
Sure.
ML1 indicates like no compliance, means product suppliers typically perform product development in an ad hoc manner and often undocumented or not fully documented manner. So it's like cooking a dish by instinct without following a recipe book. And if the dish you cook is not good, you try to adjust the taste by adding more condiments. So at this level, there is a lot of variation in the output. So you can imagine, like if organization at ML1 means they are trying to manage, and the product output may be different. Then
So,
comes the ML2. Yeah.
well, you've
So
got maturity levels, and this isn't the first time that we've talked about maturity levels,
yeah.
right? So I want to have this for those that have never heard of a 4-1 certification, right? Instead of looking at this as a check the block activity, you've got 4 different levels, all the way from the ad hoc to the managed to defined, and then I think the last one is like self-improving, right?
Correct.
That generally follows. I mean, if you look at NIST CSF implementation tiers, you look at a lot of the different maturity models that are out there. Does 4-1 certification mean that you have been verified to one of those maturity levels? Or is it more where as long as you can verify that you're continually moving up that maturity chain that you're certified? How does the actual certification be exercised, Rahul?
Yeah. So like if we talk about like certification, so directly jumping on like how do we measure the maturity levels, like how do we certify it? Definitely maturity level is a key consideration for certification. Like in the end the certificate will indicate what maturity level organization comply to. Yeah, that is the
Right.
end goal. But this preparation is needed for this 4-1 certification. There are different steps. Yeah. So that is important. Like achieving certain maturity level, there is a journey for that. Means if somebody wants to achieve ML2, that could be the first goal, because ML1 is like means it's not really documented. So ML2 is like you have the process and procedures, but you have not applied to a product. So in ML3 you will try to apply in a product. So but before going for maturity level assessment as part of certification, generally like we'll suggest to the client, understand the standard first. Yeah. So start by thoroughly understanding the ISA IEC 62443 4-1 standard, and which actually focus on this life cycle concept. Then do the product assessment themselves to assess your product to determine how they align with the security requirements outlined in the standard. Then implement a robust security development lifecycle process for your products, and then ensure that your product incorporate necessary security features such as authentication, authorization, encryption, and secure update mechanism. The most important is start preparing the document, and then prepare comprehensive documentation that details your security development processes and practices. And this documentation will be crucial during the certification process.
Right.
Then another thing is conduct thorough security testing, including vulnerability assessments, penetration testing to identify and remediate any vulnerabilities in your product. Another important aspect, secure supply chain. So because many of these component product, there are a lot of bought outs. Yeah, you are buying components from the third party. So ensure that your supply chain practices are secure from sourcing component to the final assembly to prevent tampering or unauthorized access at any stage. Yeah, and
So
then yeah.
yeah, so I've got this functionality here, and I hope nobody minds, but I can actually show some questions. So I thought this one was a good one. Coming from Robert, should OEMs send out their compliance cert every time the product is retested over its lifetime?
Should OEM send out new compliance certificate every time the product is retested? Not necessarily. Therefore, as I mentioned, like there are certain guidelines. See, what happens is you have designed a product based on 4-2, and you have therefore uh, maybe I'll before answering to this question, I want to bring attention how this certification work. Like if you need a see, the end goal is getting a certificate for 4-2 for your product, because but uh, to differentiate OT cybersecurity from IT, 62443 standard as defined common component security constraint. It's called CCSC. And there are four CCSC: support of essential function, compensating countermeasures, least privilege, and the last one is very important. You should have a software development process based on ISA IEC 62443 4-1. Yeah.
Mm.
So what does it mean? That you can't get a 4-2 certificate unless you have the 4-1 certificate. So, and that's the benefit. Like when, if anyone approaching to any certification body, they will ensure that before awarding a 4-2, means after assessment issuing a certificate for a product, it's important to have 4-1 certificate, which is related to secure product development lifecycle. Now question comes, like every time you are doing testing, you have to go for certification. See, if you are developing, because if you have secured 4-2 certificate, means you have 4-1 certificate also, secure product development lifecycle. And there are 8 practices. There is one practice SPV, like secured, that is related to your testing. So when you are doing testing, you might be developing your process or procedures, how to do the testing. So
Right.
what this standard mention, like if you find any new vulnerability, let's say your product is certified and you identify any vulnerability, it doesn't mean it has to go for the recertification. You do the testing, and you should have a vulnerability management procedure. So how you are managing those vulnerability, and if those vulnerabilities are really having any impact on the product use, then how you are informing those, like if you have developed any patch for that, then how you are doing the patch management, how you are communicating that patch management to the system integrator or assets owner. So it's all about, like, you should have a process and procedures to take care of all the security controls, or if anything changing, status changing. So it doesn't mean that it has to go for the recertification. It's all about you should have a some control mechanism, like how do you control those aspects here.
Right. Right. So I want to switch. We're at 45. We've only got a couple minutes left. I wanted to cover a point that you and I both talked about. When is the right time to bring a third party in to help you with this process? Obviously, certification is a third party body, but as it relates to improving your secure product lifestyle, as it relates to training your own staff, building out your program. If you want to move from a level 1 to a level 2 to level 3 to level 4, if you really want to try to improve your program, it's always great to have either an internal or external consultant, right? So not focusing just on the latter. Talk to us about the value that you see when bringing somebody into the fold that's either external to the team from the corporate group, or having an external consultant or advisory group come in.
Yeah. So means where we stop in the previous topic, like you have to apply all those, like you have to create documentation, you have to apply testing procedure if you are not doing. So there are a lot of requirement in 62443, like testing by independent team and so many things. So when you have done all this thing, then you can invite any third party certification bodies for gap assessment before the certification. So gap assessment is like what is your readiness for the certificate. So that is save a lot of time for the product manufacturers. Like when product is ready for market launch, and then you are approaching the certification bodies for certification. So and if a lot of gaps identified, then it may be like delay the whole process for your market launch, and there is a greater risk. Like if a lot of deficiencies identified during those assessment, then it might take longer time. So we generally say, like when you are ready with your process procedures, means at certain stage, then you can invite, you can do do an early engagement to do the gap assessment before going for the certification. Yeah. And then most importantly, this third party. So first is, if you are engaging a third party, the compliance is assured by a trusted third party. So it's all about trust factor within the
Sure.
life cycle. Yeah. Then secondly, certification agencies, as I mentioned about CCSC, there are four constraint mentioned. So they will always ensure that this product has been developed following the secure development life cycle. Then of course third party means they will be like unbiased, creating trust, ensuring validation of the claims. And then the last, like currently for this IEC 62443 certification, there are two schemes. So this some certification are recognized internationally. So this is easier for global companies to do business. So this is where this third party certification bring value to the product manufacturers.
Yeah, make perfect sense. Make perfect sense. I want to post a couple questions that I thought directly tie to the point. We've got one question that I'm going to show up on the screen right now. From an oil and gas and petrochem industry perspective, if they've already got installed systems in place, how difficult is it to transition to the 62443 journey? And I think he means just 4-1.
Yeah, so is if we are talking about the install system,
Right.
so it's more than 4-1 and 4-2, because as we have discussed in the beginning, it's mainly concentrating on the component or product manufacturer. Then if we are talking about install system, then we have to take care of this 3-3 certification also in consideration, which is related to system integration. And then 2-4, which is more about like capabilities for system integrator or service providers. Like at
Yeah.
install site, there might be service provider, those who will be providing maintenance service, and so these are like different certification. So I would say that 4-1, 4-2, in a way, yes, it is a matter of concern for the install site, because at install site you have the legacy product. So if we break it down this query, instead of like overall certification for a installed system in oil and gas facility, if we talk about that, how to ensure the certification of legacy products on install site. So see, the standard is not restricting. It's not restricting that this can be applied only to the new product. But most important aspect is like there is a provision for external countermeasures. So by doing some risk assessment studies, if you identify that there are gaps in the required security levels at the installed site, you can provide some external countermeasures. because those legacy product may not be built with the required security controls. But that can be compensated by using external countermeasures. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Right.
that is one way doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand. Look, I've got another one that I'm going to take the lead on this. So the challenge I have with certification is that most teams see it like the ultimate goal when in reality it's a bare minimum. How do you get people to understand that and that it's not the goal but the start of the journey?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think that comment in general should be framed because it's true. I tend to agree that a certification process, maybe a compliance process, that some people set their KPI or they set their annual goal on a cert. I think any security and risk management practitioner would agree that a certification should be a milestone within a much more fundamental and long-term goal of security, of risk management, of maturity, right? And I think I'm going to pass it to you, Rahul, in a moment to tell me where you think the industry is, right? But there's no doubt that with non-technical leaders, maybe the board of directors, maybe the CFO, maybe even sales organizations that say, look, we have to get a better layer of certification because we're having trouble in the market, right? There is an increased pressure and in turn demand for more certifications. As an industry, I think we've got to focus on the underlying reasoning and the business outcomes from this security rather than just the certification. And in my final point, I will say, if you get 4-1 certified, you're not going to be able to just check the block on things, right, Rahul? You're not, this is not your run-of-the-mill compliance standard where you can sort of check the block. Yep, we have that. Nope, we have that. I mean, we are looking at fundamental improvement methodologies. How can you kind of prove that there are systems in place that showcase this product lifecycle? I'll pass it to you for where you think the market is as it relates to looking at 4-1 as a compliance-oriented endeavor or more of a foundational endeavor.
Yeah, so that was really a good question, and I come across this question almost every day. Yeah, so the key thing is that this, yeah, definitely is not a tick box activity. Like, okay, we have the certification. First, let's consider we are talking about like C levels here. So a lot of new regulations coming in place. Like latest, if you talk about the EU, like NIS2 directive is coming where they have made responsible CEO of the organization if any cyber incident happening, and ensuring uh, the supply chain is if you are in a business which is like related to critical infrastructure, but this time they have included service sector also, which can impact the like supply of important essential items, yeah, to the public. So the regulations are evolving. They are the previous regulation, they are expanding their base and trying to include many of these industries, many of these products. So this certification, from one perspective, that if you are certified, if anything goes wrong, you can always defend yourself that you are showing compliance by going for the certification.
Right.
Okay, and then secondly, it helps you in mitigate security risk. Like I give you good example. Like if you are not doing certification, and let's say if you are supplying, first of all, it is creating a trust factor. So and then it increases. Like you gain the competitive advantage in a market, yeah, and then if you are not going for the certification, then what can happen? Let's say if any vulnerability identified, you will be managing thing that, okay, either you will be keeping to yourself, but if you are going for certification, you have a procedure that how to manage, like patch management procedure, like how to handle the vulnerability. You have vulnerability management processes, so you can mitigate security risk in early stages, and most importantly, enhance the security knowledge of your team. That's important. uh, this will actually equip your team how to manage the security in a better way for your product, for the product life cycle. So these are the benefit of certification. Yeah. So it's a journey, it's not a destination. And definitely this regulation aspect is more crucial, like compliance perspective. So all these factors are very important, and probably by using certification, they can benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So we don't have that much time left. We got 5 minutes. I'll give it up to you. You want to cover training or preparation for 4-1? What do you think the team wants to hear more of, Rahul?
Yeah, so I think readiness, we have discussed like what are the different steps and when they should invite uh, the third party. Yeah. So
Right.
more about like training, definitely. So see, the training means the key challenge is someone has to read that standard, and these standards are very comprehensive. And then most importantly, and they are very demanding also. Yeah, so especially 4-1 for security product development lifecycle standard, due to development processes, you have to develop a lot of processes, procedures. Yeah, so sometimes these organizations consider this as an overhead investment and opt for shortcuts. So there is no like 62443 light. Means you have to follow. And then the value of the standard lies in complete compliance. So how do you build that knowledge? Either within the team, you have to like you should develop that expertise. They can read, understand the standards, and standards say what is to be done, but how to do it's not there, because they don't define the implementation methodology. So this is where the role of training comes, that can expedite the learning process for your team. Yeah. And of course these training helps when people take the training, they understand the compliance perspective also from regulatory aspects, how to mitigate the risk, and of course it increase the security knowledge, and most importantly increase the collaboration and communication within the stakeholder. So everyone will be talking the same term. Like as I mentioned, like there are different terminology in 62443, and if you have not been gone through the reading of these standard or training, you might be using different term and you are doing supply to your stakeholder. The context might differ. Yeah. So the to increase collaboration and communication, this training is important. And
Yeah,
of course it lowers the cost. Yeah. Also in case any cyber attack happens, so how to like respond to the incident, and legal fees, etc. So overall it increase productivity, efficiency due to fewer downtime incidents. Yeah. And improve reputation and customer trust, so leading to higher goodwill for the organization. So these are the benefits, yeah, training can bring.
well said. Well, Rahul, I don't think there's a single asset owner, supplier, even vendor, whether it's hardware or software, integrator or consultant, that wouldn't benefit from investing in more training, whether that's IT training, whether that's OT training, whether that's 62443 training, whether it's NIS2 training for what's happening in Europe by October of this coming year. I believe that there are more than enough qualified people out there to teach. I think that there's more than enough standards out there. What we need to do is we need to get some of these leaders to unlock their budget and their time to get younger people out there on the forefront. That's why this show exists. And I want to thank you on behalf of all the folks out there, whether novice or experts, to for joining this show so that they can learn a little bit more about 4-1. I know that we left a lot uncovered. Tell us how people can get a hold of you. You're obviously a huge LinkedIn personality. How can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about 4-1?
Oh yeah, means they can reach out to me through my LinkedIn contact through a chat box here, and
Very cool.
I'm always available to extend the help because
No,
this training and awareness is important.
it is.
And, yeah, so
It's the future. I'm going to put one last one up. How can I review all previous recordings? Thank you for the question. Best way you can do it is follow me on LinkedIn, Ted Gutierrez. This is the Business of Cyber Show. And next week, we are going to be, let's put this up on the slide. Next week, we're going to be talking about manufacturing sector cyber challenges. Now, we had somebody that was ready to come on for pharmaceuticals. Unfortunately, didn't get the green light to join. So we're actually bringing somebody in from the chemical sector. Super excited. Former CISO going to be joining us. That is next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central Time. Join us, follow us. And once again, this is the Business of Cyber show where we talk about resources. There are limited resources that we don't have enough of in people, time, energy, as well as budget. So we got to use them really wisely. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, everybody that joined. We had incredible participation numbers. Thank you for your comments, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rahul.
Thank you. Bye.